Redguards, the dark-skinned humanoids from Hammerfell who are obsessed with swords and martial combat, like I am with Canis root tea and torturing my constituents, I mean, performing delicate experiments. But, like all of the races of Tamriel, the Redguards have been known to roam across the land, and if one were to end up in Skyrim and become prophesized as the last Dragonborn destined to defeat Alduin, how well would they fit in with Nordic culture and the narrative of the main story? Hello my fellow hirelings of House Telvanni! I'm Neloth, and today I want to talk about the Redguards, specifically how a Redguard could be the main protagonist in Skyrim, the last Dragonborn, and fit narratively in its heavy Nordic themes and settings, living and fighting in the cold Nordic homeland, and rising up to become the hero who defeats Alduin and saves the world. Because if you really analyze the Redguards from their faith and culture to political beliefs in the Fourth Era, they aren't so different from the Nords, and one could fit perfectly as an outsider hero. Before we begin, I want to say that I'm attempting to look at Skyrim through the lens of a full-on Redguard whose views are shaped solely by the common society and culture of Hammerfell alone. There are naturally Redguards that deviate from the norm and become assassins, wizards, and even vampires. But the goal here is basically to explain how a Redguard Dragonborn can easily fit into the society of Skyrim and thrive narratively in Skyrim's main story, as well as other aspects. So first, we should figure out what would drive a Redguard to leave their homeland and venture to places like Skyrim. Everyone has their reasons, but what would be some specific cultural and political reasonings? According to the mongrel dogs of the Empire, Redguards are known for their love of traveling and adventuring, seeing new lands, and experiencing new things. This adventuresome spirit, on top of the fact that they are excellent at martial combat, especially with swords, makes them perfect as sailors and traveling mercenaries. Careers which aren't really known for sitting around and twaddling their thumbs. There are also sword singers, Redguards who practice the way of the sword. Granted, there are far fewer sword singers than there used to be, and the Ansei, the greatest of the sword singers, are seen as little more than a myth, but those who wish to honor the way of the sword and its teachings may go off to foreign lands to put their skills to the test against enemies with different teachings, in order to learn new martial skills and gain new experiences. The Great War between the Empire and the Thalmor also left Hammerfell in a destitute state, especially after the Empire renounced Hammerfell in the White Gold Concordat, forcing the Redguards to fight the Thalmor alone for 5 more years. And even though the Redguards were able to fend off against the Thalmor, leading to a treaty being signed, most of southern Hammerfell was severely crippled. Hammerfell is likely still in turmoil even after 20 years, leading some Redguards to go ply their trade in distant lands. So now we know the reasons why a Redguard would be willing to venture to a land like Skyrim, but the Nordic homeland also has plenty of cultural reasons for attracting Redguards. The Nords and Redguards are both a militant people, more so than any other race with the exception of the Orcs. So while Hammerfell and Skyrim are opposite when it comes to temperature, weather, and fauna, they are very alike militaristically. Both obsess over conquest. The biggest difference would mainly be that Redguards like swords and Nords their axes. Additionally, there is the Companions, the warrior guild based in the city of Whiterun that recruits people to fight for gold, glory, and to honor Ysgramor. While we don't see any Redguards in the Companions, it does make for the perfect faction for a Redguard to advance in, especially for one that may honor the way of the sword and want to learn new techniques. And you don't have to be a Nord to join the Companions. Not only can we meet Rhea, who's an Imperial, and Athos, who is a Dark Elf, but the Companions also had leaders, or Harbingers, that were not of Nordic descent. This includes Henantir the Outsider, who was the first Elven Harbinger, and before him, Sirach the Lofty, who was a Redguard and the first ever Harbinger not of Atmoran descent. Also, when fighting for the Companions, you may think that attempting to honor Ysgramor in battle would be strange and out of character for anyone who isn't a Nord, but for a Redguard it could actually make a lot of sense, because the actions of Ysgramor are quite similar to that of the Yokudans and Regada, the progenitors to the Redguards. See, Ysgramor is famously known for waging war with the Snow Elves after they attacked the Nordic settlement of Sarthal for quote-unquote unknown reasons. And after a tactical retreat, Ysgramor came back to Skyrim with his legendary 500 companions and absolutely obliterated the Snow Elves from the face of the earth, forcing many to either flee Tamriel or accept a horrific deal with the dwarves, or go out fighting. Ysgramor was also known for waging war with the giants, including Sinmur. He also killed so many frost giants to the point where he was frequently covered in their blue blood. This led to the frost giants becoming endangered, and those that remained retreated to less populated areas and lived in hiding. Like I said before, the Yokudans and Regada performed very similar actions to that of Ysgramor and his Atmoran boys. For example, before the continent of Yokuda sunk into the ocean and the Yokudans made their way to Tamriel, they lived on their continent with a group of elves known as the Sinestral Elves or the Left-Handed Elves. The Yokudans and the Sinestral Elves were bitter enemies, and they warred against each other for 1,000 years until they were defeated by the Yokudans with the help of Diagna, an avatar of the Hunding, one of the Yokudan gods. The Sinestral Elves that survived fled to the Sistris Archipelago, a group of islands west of Tamriel in the Abyssian Sea. But the Yokudans weren't done with the remnants of these elves and followed them to their little islands and proceeded to massacre all of them, which is probably why you haven't heard of the Sinestral Elves until this video. After slaughtering the elves and sinking their continent of Yokuda, the Yokudans sailed for Tamriel, where they landed on the shores of Tamriel, more precisely that of Hammerfell. These Yokudans that came to Tamriel were known as the Regada, or Warrior Wave, and they took over Hammerfell in the bloodiest of ways. The Regada first destroyed a great many orcish settlements, and as they went further inland, they slew many monsters and beasts. They attacked settlements belonging to basically everyone, from the Needs to the Bretons to many Mer as well. After 100 years of hostilities with the Bretons, they even forged a truce in order to sack the Orcish kingdom of Orsinium. At one point, the Regada even fended off a massive invasion of goblins against all odds and drove them from Hammerfell into many caves deep down below the surface. Suffice it to say, the Yokudans, who would become the Regada, who would become the Redguards, have a pretty militant and violent history, same as the Nords. So, a Redguard who takes pride in his people's history of battle and conquest might have a deep respect for the Nords' history as well. There is also the Dawnguard, which is perfect for Redguards. Vampires don't have much of a history among Hammerfell and many Redguards, but since many of them abhor magic and beasts, it would make a lot of sense for a Redguard to enlist, since vampires are basically a mix of the two. And a Redguard would be absolutely disgusted with vampires trying to blot out the sun, or Daibethe as they call it, as one of the Yokudan gods, Tava, is associated with elements of the sun. And also, the leader of the Dawnguard is the glorious and absolutely based Isran, who is also a Redguard. One might find a sort of kinship with him. Moving on, you have the civil war seen in Skyrim between the Stormcloaks and the Empire. Nords who wish to be free from the laws of the Empire and make their own way and worship their own gods, and Nords who are loyal to the Empire and believe Skyrim would be severely weakened without them. And because of how the Empire abandoned Hammerfell to the Thalmor after the Great War, you might end up sympathizing with the Stormcloak cause and desire to draw your sword for them so that they can be free and chart their own course. And besides, a full-out war is the perfect way to hone your swordsmanship and earn honor and glory as well as some gold. Now, there are two dominant factions in Hammerfell, the Crowns and the Forebears. The Crowns are more traditionalist and dislike foreign influence, and the Forebears are more cosmopolitan and are open to outside influence, even that of the Empire. By the time of Skyrim's setting, it makes sense that the Crowns absolutely abhor the Empire, and even many Forebears as well. But there are some Forebears that might wish for a return to the Empire in order to unite and destroy the Thalmor, who they might see as the real enemy. This is ultimately your decision, but if you're going to be playing as a traditionalist Redguard who honors the Yokuden way, then you might lean more towards the Crowns and therefore maybe the Stormcloaks. Now, I want to get to the heart of this video, the main reason I made this video in the first place, and that is how a Redguard Dragonborn would fit in with the narrative of the main storyline, because a Redguard would work better than you think. We all know that the big bad guy is Alduin, the World Eater, the firstborn son of Akatosh, also known to some, mainly the ancient Nords, as Akatosh himself. But what you might not know is that there is a variation of Alduin in the Redguard religion, referred to as the Yokuden Pantheon, and that would be Satakal, the first serpent and Yokuden god of everything. See, Alduin is prophesied with bringing an end to the current world in order to usher in the next one, ending the current Kalpa and ushering in a new one. See, Satakal is very similar to Alduin, but instead of being a dragon, Satakal is a serpent. Before Satakal, there was Satak, who was everything, and nothing else did or could exist, because there was no space for other things to exist. Only Satak. But because there is nothing except Satak, Satak became as hungry as a mukbang YouTuber, and was convinced by his stomach, also known as Akel, to consume itself, to sate Satak's hunger. But Akel, Satak's hunger, caused Satak to bite his own heart, which promptly killed him. But not even death could stop the hunger of Satak, and so the first serpent shed its own skin to begin again. And so the old world died, and when the new world began, Satak was reborn as Satakal. But Satakal's hunger was never sated, much like his previous self, and has consumed many worlds just for them to begin again, just for him to consume again. Now, if this sounds confusing, that's because it is, and I'll explain why the Yokuden Pantheon is so foreign and alien in a bit. But the point I'm trying to make is that the big bad Alduin and the Yokuden god Satakal are intertwined, allowing for a Redguard Dragonborn to have a more deeper connection to Alduin and making the final fight between them all the more personal. Besides, Satakal is heavily worshipped by Redguard nomads, and the player character is already pretty nomadic in general, not staying in one place for long and having a house in every hold. So a Redguard character could worship Satakal, and a fight between a worshipper and their own god to delay the end of the world would make for some pretty damn good and intriguing storytelling. What's also interesting about a Redguard fighting Alduin, or Satakal as I will refer to him for the rest of the video, is that the Redguards and their gods were one of the few to escape Satakal's hunger. See, each time Satakal consumed a world, there would be spirits that would avoid being consumed by moving at strange angles, This was referred to as the Walkabout. And with the help of Ruptka, or Tall Papa, the chief deity in the Yokudan pantheon, the Walkabout process became so easy that it just became a place called the Far Shores, the afterlife of the Redguards. This means that, in a sense, the Redguards and their ancestor spirits were all from a previous Kalpa, a previous world before Satakal consumed it. Which is why the Yokudan pantheon seems so alien, and why Redguards in general look different than the other human races and behave antithetical to them. Because unlike the other human races, the Redguards despise Lorcan, or Sep as they call him, because he made it difficult for them to jump into the Far Shores again, only able to do so by living on through their children. So who better to defeat Satakal than the descendant of one who escaped his wrath long ago? Now, when it comes to being the Dragonborn, it should be noted that being one isn't just specific to the Nords or Imperials. Especially since the Greybeards say that it is a blessing given to you by Akatosh and Kine, or Tall Papa and Tava, who are likely the Yokudan versions of those two. Even if being Dragonborn was not a blessing bestowed by the gods to a prophesized hero, there is a Yokudan spirit god called the Hunding. The Hunding is the make-way god and is able to materialize when the Redguards are in need and can manifest in certain people, becoming an avatar of the Hunding. You could say that the Hunding had made its way to make a Redguard hero into the Dragonborn in order to delay Satakal from devouring the world. But these are all just beliefs that a Redguard might have that could connect them to Skyrim and aren't necessarily the truth. But in the Elder Scrolls, stories, creation myths, and gods are all true, but also false at the same time. What a beautiful dichotomy. And that's all I wrote! A video I wanted to make that carefully explains why a Redguard would make for the perfect protagonist in Skyrim from a narrative perspective. In the Elder Scrolls, and just fiction in general, I have always been a fan of an unlikely hero rising up to become a savior and hero. And in the Elder Scrolls, where there is a Bible's worth of lore, you can easily draw connections to further connect certain characters and races to lands and stories you might not think would work at first. I also just really like the Redguards in general and love making videos that further explain and expand on their lore, and felt that Redguards and Nords have more in common than you think. I also love my channel members whose patronage allows me to continue making videos like these. And those members are Mirak, Sovdark, Conarunda, Nork, Will Ernst, The Proud Prince, Deadpool Maoista, Skooma Addict, JJ Ensid, Ranger McKay, Grud, Malani Stilla, Alex Fridley, and Corey Thybin. And if you would like to see my videos earlier by either 24 hours or even 3 days, then consider becoming a member. All members get early access, and Oathman and Mouths will get shoutouts at the beginning or end of almost every video. So with all that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful.